kind of cheap to use the same intro music twice. Sorry. Action figure! Hey kids! Back with a new old action figure review. Since the last review was all about Indiana Jones, this time we're talking about Indiana Jones! Specifically the 2008 Kingdom of the Crystal Skull Indiana Jones from Hasbro. Yeah, everybody has an opinion, I'll get to that. Let me start by saying that Harrison Ford and I have a sordid past. When I was very young, I had the Endor Han Solo figure from Return of the Jedi. We lived in Pennsylvania, and we always had a fire going in the winter. The fireplace in our living room was kind of unique in that it was essentially a metal box with glass and metal doors that swung open and locked with a turn of the handle. Kinda like being in a submarine, I guess. But as a lad, I had been jumping Han along the back of the love seat near the fireplace, onto the arm of it, and then I had the brilliant idea to tap Han's feet very quickly on top of the fireplace, and I did. And Han's feet instantly became welded there, and I could not pull them off. Nor could my brothers, nor could my father, and I was forced to watch, in horror, somewhat reminiscent of seeing him going into carbon freeze, as he turned into an oozing pool. Another time, I had gotten the LJN Indiana Jones figure from the Temple of Doom toy line. My brothers and I were supposed to stay over at my cousin's house the night that I got him. I begged my parents to let me take him with me, even though they said I was going to lose him, and I justified that I would leave all his accessories at home and I wouldn't lose him. 35 years later, I still have his satchel and machete. I have no idea what happened to him. I assume one of my cousin's numerous animals ate him. All attempts to replace Indy were futile. I never saw another one of them in the store ever again. Now, a new one in the package can retail on eBay for about $400. Nice. That one, though, I think we can blame on my parents for jinxing me. I've thought about doing a 2-panel illustration and comic about it, but I haven't gotten around to it. It'd basically be a shot of Indy's hat, machete, and satchel sitting by themselves, and then another shot of the top of our fireplace with a puddle that has an arrow pointing at it that says Han Solo. So most of my childhood was spent Indy-less. Indy-less? I just made that word up. Coined. Trademarked. Even the one time I went to Toys R Us and they still had Raiders action figures from 1981, they only had the evil German Tote and the horse. So Tote and numerous G.I. Joes were my stand-ins for the man in the fedora. As it was, Muskrat from G.I. Joe ended up being my Indiana Jones during my formative years. Why does any of this matter? Because when they released Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull in 2009, Hasbro released a new line of figures, and I bought almost every figure they released. Needless to say, I am now lousy with indies. Each figure came with a different artifact. This is brilliant and cool. Whoever was in charge of this deserves a raise. It's a brilliant scheme to get you to keep buying figures. And the artifacts have another level of cool because a bunch of them are based on actual Dark Horse Comics MacGuffins. Like the Indy with the rocket launcher from Crystal Skull came with the dagger of Atreus from Indiana Jones and the Golden Fleece. Or Colonel Vogel came with the axe of Leif Erikson from the comic Indiana Jones and the Sargasso Pirates, which I happened to mention briefly in the last review. There were a few deluxe sets that I stupidly missed out on because I, at the time, didn't think I wanted them. Now they go for around $30 to $40 online. One of them was the Ark of the Covenant, which came with Indiana Jones, that I had to get, and I also bought the German motorcycle because I love bikes. But there were 3 others, such as Indy with the horse, the Temple Trap, which recreated the famous scene where Indy is attempting to swap the sandbag with stealing the... Oh god, here we go. I was trying to avoid having to say the name. They call it the Golden Idol, or Fertility Idol for short, but it's based on Chachapoyan Idol. And there was the Temple Pitfall. I didn't buy any of the vehicles or the Temple of Akator. In hindsight, I kind of wish I did, and I definitely wish I had bought those other deluxe sets. There was also a Mutt Williams of the motorcycle that I had forgotten about, but that doesn't seem to sell too badly anymore. It's ridiculous. With the Crystal Skull figures, it was like they couldn't even give them away, and now even some of the lesser wanted characters sell for high prices. Another aspect of my personality, if you hadn't guessed already, is I adore toys and action figures. I love how they're made and sculpted, and if I had any common sense after high school, I would have gone to college for toy design and production. Also, trade secret. Toys are super important to me in generating ideas for stories and comics, and since childhood, I've had the habit of carrying at least one figure on me wherever I go. There are times that I tend to take pictures of them in random environments, or say if we go to a museum, I'll hold a figure up around the display and snap a picture. A trip to the Conservatory of Flowers in San Francisco turned into a jungle trek and some side glances from other patrons. Anyway, this is the Indiana Jones I carry with me to work, and I think is the best 3 3/4 Indiana Jones figure there is. Common complaints are his hair is gray and his hat's too big, but honestly, if his hair was slightly darker, you wouldn't even know that it was the Crystal Skull Indy. And the fact that you can remove the hat makes it a worthwhile design. Sorry, tangent, I had to share this because I've never seen this before. And now I have something new to research later. They used one Indy body for the basis of numerous figures, no doubt saving a fortune on mold production and maximizing returns for minimal effort. These are my 4 favorites. Rocket Launcher Indy on the far left came with no hat, and is actually the base I'm using to make a George Lucas and Carbonite figure. Raiders Indy on the far right has an enormous gun holster, which is cool because it works, and ridiculous because it's ridiculous, and depending, you run a chance of getting an Indy that's a bit wall-eyed. This particular one was a stand-in for the annual traditional May the 4th / birthday freezing of Han Solo, when I misplaced him one year. Temple of Doom Indy is my second favorite, but struggles to look up and down. Also, if you order a loose one you find online from China, you apparently run the risk of him having 2 right thighs, which means that Indy will have a half butt on the front, like something out of Spaceballs. Also, the satchel on the Temple of Doom Indy figure has 2 of the Shankara stones inside. Finally, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull Indy is just right despite the holster being useless. He's got a ball-jointed head, peg swivel arms that allow for full rotation with rotating wrists. The elbows and knees have the same type of swivel peg rotation, and his feet can rotate and extend. This figure comes standard with a replaceable left hand with attached crystal skull that looks nothing like the movie, a rolled-up bullwhip, his trusty fedora, and his Raider-style Smith & Wesson revolver. There's also an extended bullwhip that he comes with, which I guess is cool for posing him, but my inner kid wishes they would have included a twine whip like they did with the whip-cracking Indy figure. Side note, to any toy developers listening, do not make an action figure with special features, ever. Kids don't want to be told how to play with their toys. In the interest of generating story ideas, I personally tend to customize my figures. In this case, he has the machete from Temple of Doom Indy, a random katana, extra rope, and an idol of Cthulhu from H.P. Lovecraft's Cthulhu mythos. The idol is tied to a one-off story dream project that I'll never be allowed to do, which crosses over Indy's world with Lovecraft's. I actually made a poster a few years ago that could stand to be recolored. It would involve a young Henry Jones Jr. crossing paths with the Cthulhu call, meeting his good friend Renee Belloc, who ultimately ends up betraying him, and the use of the Necronomicon in conjunction with the idol to summon the Elder God himself. It was pretty awesome a few years ago when Warpo Toys released the Legends of Cthulhu line of figures, and I was finally able to realize in life a drawing I did in dry erase at an old job of mine. So how does this Indy compare to the original Kenner? Surprisingly, for being 37 years old, the original Indy feels like it has a lot in common with his later counterpart, and a couple of things that I think make him better than the new one. As far as his legs go, he also has a knee bend, and because of the cut of his hip, he's able to ride a horse, which the Crystal Skull one cannot do. He has a twine whip, which can be rolled up and hung from his belt, which is awesome, and his gun, though not entirely stable, can be attached to the holster. Unfortunately, he does have a whip action feature in his right arm, and his hat is not removable, but overall he's a great figure for 1981. Ah, look at that advertising, I love it! Don't bother trying the link though, I guess the statute of limitations is probably up on websites advertising action figures that are 10 years old for movies that didn't do well. I have to get on a soapbox here for a second and say one major complaint I have with the toy industry is exclusives. Figures or sets put out only at specific conventions and never available later on to the general public. They usually sell out pretty fast in these places and immediately go up online minutes afterwards for double and triple the price. This practice benefits no one but a disgusting secondary market of scalpers. It infuriates me. An example, the Lost Wave. When the 2008 line of Indiana Jones figures were released, there was a bit of a mix of figures from Raiders and Crystal Skull, but people had been waiting for new Raiders figures for 27 years. And the Crystal Skull one, no one knew if they were even gonna like the movie yet. So all the Raider stuff sold like crazy, and the Crystal Skull stuff sat on the shelves. The next wave had Last Crusade figures, arguably the most popular of all the movies, and more Crystal Skull figures. Long story short, especially after the movie came out, Crystal Skull figures choked the toy aisle, and the line was cancelled just as the Temple of Doom figures were going to be released. Which sucks. Stores wouldn't order the new line of figures if they had a glut of Crystal Skull figures. 4 years later, I was finally able to find the Temple of Doom figures in the packages with all the extra artifacts from a seller in China for a decent price. Praise be eBay. Later, I found out there was an exclusive San Diego Comic-Con convention set called The Lost Wave, which included 6 unreleased figures from Raiders of the Lost Ark. He came with Satipo with his back covered in spiders, Indy from the Idol sandbag swap scene, Marion missing a shoe with a bunch of snakes, another Indy in his German disguise, the German mechanic, which I had been hoping they'd make, and a new tote figure with a freaking melted face head swap. Let's just see what it's selling for on Amazon right now. Oh, nice, nice. Same on eBay, huh? You. People will do this too, and break up the set, selling each figure for $80. Scumbags. This is a big reason why earlier I said I bought almost every figure. But you can see because of the glut of Crystal Skull figures, they were gonna release this line and never did, and instead made it an exclusive that I'll never have. So I was forced to buy a version of the German mechanic previously sold in a Disney theme park, which never means quality. He is slightly more enormous than the Hasbro figures, so at least that's kinda cool. Anyways, soapbox over. Oh, speaking of Disney, check this out. I bought this German soldier figure from a retro toy shop specifically because of this. A crate that is supposed to contain the Ark of the Covenant for transport to Berlin. Yes, folks! Disney actually sold in their parks a toy that had a swastika on it. Points for attention to detail. Like I said before, I'm a big fan of the artifact, and I like to add to the ones that I have whenever I can in each of the scale figures that I own. This guy is the remains of Montezuma from G.I. Joe, laying in a coffin for Pirates of the Caribbean. The melted Vader helmet is a nice addition to the 6-inch Japanese Indy, and for a good while I had an obsession with getting accessories from other figures to augment my 8-inch Indy from Disney. Things like the Necronomicon from Army of Darkness, and a sand tablet with R2-D2 and C-3PO. And the Lament Matrix from Hellraiser. I also used to print maps, money, and passports in scale, and scatter them around the layout I had for him. I also made the One Ring for him. One thing I'd love to get for him is an 8-inch Han in carbonite, but I've had no luck yet. Anyway, I'm rambling now. That's gonna do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed my manic look at my favorite Indiana Jones figures? And let's do another one of these real soon.
Get that greaser!